So we're going to get things rolling by asking a question. So whoever wants to go first, don't mind. But should testers code? Who wants to take that one? Do you want to start? Let's pick on one of you.
I was trying to keep quiet.
Everyone's looking at you, so I thought.
Yeah, it's always me. I'm Lee, and as Amy did mention, I'm from a company called Fanatics. Testers code, to a certain degree, yes, to a certain degree, no. Depends on the tester what they want to do in their career. In my opinion, me, yes. I want to learn how to code myself. I want to learn how to write integration tests through Selenium, through anything I can really. That's the way I want to go. I'm passionate about getting closer to the code, testing the code, testing things earlier. So I think it's up to the company's resources as well. How well can the company provide the resource for the testers to learn code? Because it's not an easy task, as I'm finding out myself over the last couple of months. So yeah, in a way no. Does that make sense?
It sounds brutal as well. I avoid at least admitting that I can code a little bit, because I don't want to be put in a box of you're an automation tester so you can go do this all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got these skills. I'm not interested in it. I understand the importance of it and how it can be useful in our jobs, but I'm just not interested in it. Unless I want to do something really fast, and then it's fine, but it's not like something I'd want to do every day.
And like I say, it's up to the tester themselves going down that route as well, totally. Isn't it? It's like, it's what your preference is. If you want to go down that route, you would obviously go for an automation job with a bit of manual. And then if you want to go down the manual route and maybe learn automation along the way, little bits in there, and then decide later on you can do. But again, I think it's up to the tester, but then, like I say, the company's resource if you want to do that route as well.
So you're talking a lot about being able to code, just being doing the automated testing. I don't code, but I can read it.
Yeah.
So I'm a great believer in testers and developers working very close together. So when a developer codes and does unit tests, they walk me through them. They walk me through what they've done, and that helps me feel more comfortable what being delivered to me. So I can understand where they've done their unit tests, and it also helps me gauge how much time, if I'm short of time on what I'll test, I know that they've got unit tests covering certain things, so I know that I can test outside of those boundaries that they've already got the unit tests for. So that's, I would say, an understanding of code is actually quite valid. It's not necessary by any means whatsoever. It depends on how close you want to work with the developers, I guess.
Question, would you suggest extra unit tests if you've got something missing?
I've often done that, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I agree with that as well, because it goes down the risk-based testing approach. So you can, because you might have thousands and thousands and thousands of scenarios, and if you can get close to the developer, put extra tests in the code, you know it's going to be more robust when it comes to actually manually testing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always agree with that one.
And it helps you gain an understanding of what's actually been developed. Just the conversation and looking through the code with the developers.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
Because
demo
quite
has to
often,
hand over.
yeah, quite often there's misunderstandings on what you think should happen with a story if you're going down the agile routes.
On the back of this, we see more and more jobs available for devs in test. And I'm going to ask the question, do devs make good testers? And will they replace testers?
Cool. No, I don't think so. I think there's quite a divide between the two. I think it's different mindsets.
I think you get some testers who have turned into devs and are really good testers, but they also get a different mindset, as you mentioned there, going down the dev approach for everything, get things done quickly, because most of the time you've got high time scales to actually be there. So I don't agree getting rid of testers. I think devs and test, I've heard of some companies do it recently, and I do not agree with it at all.
I think it depends on the product as well, because if I'm working on a product that's very input-output and it's manual but doesn't need to be, I'm more than happy for devs to do that or automate it.
But you still got
get it off my plate.
But testers are still involved.
It depends on the product. I'd argue that there are some products that you don't need to be involved in. If it's very clear-cut product with just like very input-output-y data sets or whatever, I don't think you should argue that a tester is always needed 100% of the time on every product.
Would you get a tester to look over the scenarios? What they're actually putting through the test on?
Potentially, yeah. but maybe, depends on the scenarios, I guess.
Or get a BA.
Sorry, go on.
Get a BA to look over the scenarios. But I completely agree with all three of you, so I'm not saying anything.
That's cop out.
No, perfectly valid.
Has anyone else got any other questions? Anything at all, especially on the topic tonight?
Yeah. So we're moving to have teams that are all fully based around quality, trying to embed quality within that. Do you see the tester roles going to be more obsolete in the future, whereas every single person needs to be involved in trying to get that quality out there, or are we just going to disappear?
Rob, do you want to say that?
I don't think we're going to disappear. I think quality software or the product we're producing will be a shared responsibility across your team. I think, I'd like to think that the tester would be the one who champions that and helps share the knowledge on the different ways of thinking between a developer and a tester or a BA, for example, or a PA. You'll be able to collaborate between all parties and all specialists and just help walk them through things and way of thinking. So if, heaven forbid, I get, the tester gets run over by a bus tomorrow, the whole place doesn't crumble because you're sharing your knowledge across the whole, your whole team. So I think it's more of an enabler. I think that's where I think testing will be going to.
You're supposed to win the lottery, not get run over by a bus. That's politically correct.
I'm not going to lie, if I'm on the lottery, it still works.
I think there's a difference between quality and so my role is quality assurance manager at the moment, and I've moved more into quality around the basis that I look at documentation. Currently the company I work for is a startup company, so we don't have many roles for many people. But even when I've been in a company where there's a BA, there's a product owner, there are devs, there are testers, and quality, I think, is quality is overarching. And I think sometimes, I think there's a place for both of them. And I think a quality assurance QA person will look, like I said, over the whole end-to-end process of it all. Whereas you probably do need a BA to write your functional requirements or your stories or whatever is your acceptance criteria. You do need a developer to actually write the code. A tester can actually test what it says that it does, but that doesn't mean that it's quality that's being delivered at the end of it. So I think there can be a difference in the two roles.
We'll think more about usability from the customer's point of view, not just
it says what it doesn't. Yeah.
Who's keyed into how to use the internet. We'll think about who's never used the internet before. What if an elderly person comes on and uses it? We'll think about the usability of it all, how things lay out. Is it right? We'll question documentation, we'll question diagrams and everything like that. So I think we always are going to be needed.
So what if we're in a DevOps context? We can roll back, we can change it quickly. Surely we reduce the risk of not for more people. No, we can roll it back.
Depends on the product though, because if it's like a security vulnerability that you deploy in a few minutes could be disastrous for a company. So some products like Netflix probably in a small region could probably take the hit on a failure on their system, depending on what the failure is. But if you're working for a bank and you deploy software to production, regardless of how fast you can roll forward or roll back, that could be a significant impact to business.
But there are some contexts where we can do that.
Yeah,
there are.
How do we stay relevant in that context? How do
we have to make sure that we stay relevant. We learn new things, we learn about what they do, and try and get involved in what they do and help them out with their testing through that.
In Money Supermarket, as a tester, my role was a tester in Money Supermarket. I used to do the deployments of the services, so I used to work quite closely with the DevOps guys. I used to use Jenkins, I used to control all the deployments, I used to manage them. So that's because I knew what had been tested at that point, I knew what could be delivered. So, still relevant, I guess.
Were you on call as well?
I used to work late, but no, I wasn't on call. I'm a contractor, you don't do contractors on call.
But if you're asked to, if you're in a position that you're asked to, if you were permanent, would you go on call?
Would I go on call? It depends on how much I like the company I was working for. Yeah. It's difficult to answer because I haven't been permanent in a lot of places for a long time. So.
But you know, so in the DevOps context, we're asking developers to take on more operational responsibilities. So therefore, then start asking them to be more on call. And I get the feeling that a lot of testers have not necessarily answered that question for themselves.
Do you think it's a confidence thing though as well? Because if something goes wrong, it's likely to be code sort of thing. And if you're not comfortable with code and etc., you don't understand it, then do you want to be on call? Because if you're going to be on call, you want to be able to fix something, don't you?
Yeah.
I was on call. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I say I agree with Fiona. So I don't think a lot of our testers do the releases. We know exactly what's been released. We actually, pass the button if you like, so automated. But in relation to being on call, we wouldn't be able to fix the issue in the sense of if it is a project to be scaled down, we would need to have the developer data to actually resolve the technical issues from a release standpoint. Then the team isn't involved as a whole, but
is there a danger there?
If
Is there a danger there that
deploying
testers are not?
applications, then I think you should have the power to roll them back or understand if
yeah,
you're doing
can
a
do,
deployment
yeah.
and it breaks out of hours, and you're the one that released it, is there a responsibility there for us to, if we have the power to deploy it, do we also should have the power to be called out and roll it back?
But when do you deploy? Like, you've hit the nail on the head there. How many deployments happen now, late at night necessarily, or anything like that, unless it has to? And then you've got a team of people working on it as a rule. We used to have a cut-off at MSM by 2 o'clock. You couldn't release anything after that time.
If you release something that has a memory leak and you get called out at 8 p.m. at night, so it's been in the system for a few hours, and you're the one that released it, but now someone else and another team's responsible for fixing it, but they weren't actually involved in the release. I think there's an element of ownership. If you're allowed to deploy stuff to production, you should have a level of ownership as well. If you're in that DevOps culture where you can deploy, then you're also responsible for the code in production. So you should have a rollback plan, and I don't think there should be a fear of being called out.
I mean, don't get me wrong, if that was the case and I didn't know what it was, I would just roll back most things if it was a feasible. It's not always feasible to just roll back.
No, it's not.
But yeah,
like a
I wouldn't have a
happy
problem.
pathway.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem making a
Scenario.
call though to do a rollback at all if I deployed something.
Just on this subject, I think the whole IT industry's gone 360 degrees. Those of us who are old enough to remember the 1980s and 90s, where we still had mainframe systems and we were doing support to them, you got a phone call 2 o'clock in the morning, batches just failed, something needs to be done, and you'd have to retest something, and you'd have to go back there. We were doing on-call, you certainly remember those days. So I do think the whole thing's gone 360 degrees. So a lot of people nowadays with 24-hour shopping on servers and Amazon Web Services and all these kind of things, everyone talks about DevOps, that it's like a new thing, it's the latest thing. We were doing DevOps in the 80s and 90s in the civil service when we supported mainframe systems. It's nothing new, and I just think the whole thing's just gone 360 degrees. We're just back to the beginning again, except in a slightly different environment. I'm no longer all less reliant on mainframe systems.
But now it's so easy to go in and go straight out again.
Yeah.
It wasn't years ago. No.
You've got a lot more tools. You've got access to the internet. These things weren't around then, but I think we've got it easier.
I think in the DevOps culture, a tester can still have value. Like, for example, we're talking about being on call, because we're generally like the glue between the teams, aren't we? Like test, so like our tacit knowledge on the situation could be quite valuable. Not necessarily like sit there and code something or whatever, but we could help and maybe highlight something that everyone's forgotten.
Or also, do not all testers at some point help when there's a live problem?
Yeah, we're masters of investigation.
Yeah.
All the time, and it's all like it's my team that get asked all the time.
And I think it just depends on what company you work for and how their company is organised. If you work for a small software house, then generally everybody does a little bit of everything, maybe not the coding necessarily, but and you tend to know what's being delivered and when. But if you're working for a big, huge company, I mean, I've worked for, IBM and NatWest. At the moment I'm working for like a medical research company. These things, that it's different. how you deliver stuff and how you do stuff is different. So it's, yeah, if you're working for the right company, then there's no reason why the testers shouldn't be involved. Definitely in live support as well, definitely, all the time. That's only because I'm dead nosy and I like to know what's gone wrong. We do, because if you send something out there and it's gone wrong, you're like, oh no, did they miss it? So
any other questions?
I think it is more strategy thing. We recently shifted to blue green environment. So it's like the same environment, we refer the same database, but we have like two consumer insurances, which is one is called as blue and green. And I mean, we don't have any downtime because we have like USA and Australia and right time, so we can't have downtime. So you get point to blue, and green will be active, and you do all the testing and like performance work and everything is blue. And then once you feel it's okay, and then you should switch to green. Make the blue as green and green as blue. When from in production on the green, you switch to blue, just one button click to switch it off, so the customer will just immediately just go back to it. This was that strategy. I mean, previously, it was difficult to roll back the changes because we have different systems. So we roll back every single thing, and there will be a problem with mergers, merge codes, and everything. But this is like helping a lot. Switch to blue and switch to green. That's what we found. That's really good.
Anyone got any questions?
Do you not feel you're massively underusing your testers if they're not your last quality game before you ship to production? You just really mentioned about how your testers just doing your functional test that yes it works and then passing it off, and then you've got a extra layer of quality assurance that sits above it, but is it just business dependent?
I'm not, no. Yeah, no, I don't.
It feels like you can pay a monkey like 20 grand a year to...
Somebody might want to just do that though. That's the whole point. That's what I'm saying. So I think that's why I was saying where there's not a monkey, obviously, but no, but because you have automated testers, and some automated testers are literally only interested in doing the automation, and they do.
Who's giving them? Sorry, who's giving them the automation? That's only as good as the researchers, isn't it? Who's giving them that information?
So if you look at it from an agile point of view, I'll use Money Supermarket as an example where I work there. You would have a product owner who would come up with an idea that would be discussed with the team, with the development team, the testers. We didn't have a QA role as such, okay? But that would be discussed with everybody, okay? And then the stories would come out of that, okay? And in those stories would be acceptance criteria. The product owner would sign off the acceptance criteria and go, yeah, that's how I want it to work. And then the testers would look at what testing needs to be done around that acceptance criteria. So you've got to trust that the process works in a certain respect, but everybody is involved in that. It's not one person. It's not just a BA coming up with that acceptance criteria. And then the testers also as well. If you write so the automated tests that come out with that is against the acceptance criteria that's been written. So again, you have to I think trust that process works. But then it doesn't mean that the end product is what's actually wanted, because there's lots of times that it isn't. You know, something stupid is blue button, no, it looks better as green. You know, or something, but a blue button was the one that was decided initially in the story. So it's just that idea over the quality side of things, not a case of and some testers are more interested in the whole quality of it, process as well. You know, quality is about process as well as the final product that goes out there. And then other testers actually just want to do automated testing or be given instructions on what to do for the acceptance criteria. It's whatever suits.
So I've got a question for that, which is...
Okay.
Well, you don't have to answer.
No, it's all right.
Someone can answer it.
Go on.
So is the kind of role for testers for you to be the one testing or coaching others to test, or a combination?
Say again, sorry.
So should the role of a tester within a team be the one who's doing the testing, or coaching others to test? Predominantly coaching other people to do the testing rather than you predominantly doing it? Or is it a combination or a mix of both?
I think it's a mix. I think I've got product owners who've tested. So, you know, we've helped them understand the testing. So API, for example, massive thing. Product owners in the past have never really looked, and they've been scared of like the back end of things and stuff because they've never been exposed to it. As soon as you start sitting them down and walking them through it, they get it. because it isn't rocket science doing the API stuff and understanding it. So I think testers, again, depends on your personality, doesn't it? Depends on who you are and how you do things, and your experience. I mean, I remember testing in the 90s, so I've had a good few years worth of testing. So I've got a lot of experience, and I've been through the whole range of working from really big companies to start-up companies. So it really does depend, and I've met a broad range of people as well.
Lee, have you got any thoughts?
I agree, it's a collaborative effort to try and get quality on the line. We all learn from each other different ways, we all work with each other, we always communicate with each other. If we have an effective team like that, you always come to question things, you might figure out the green button from the blue button or whatever that might be. We do that as a team at Fanatics all the time.
How do you get to that point? Have you got any techniques to how you get to a point where the team is taking on some of these things? Because sometimes it can be difficult, people don't appreciate why that might be helpful.
We did showcases in Money Supermarket at the end of everything before anything was actually delivered live, especially for the UI stuff, not necessarily for the APIs. Yeah, it's a demo showcases. And that was not even done within the team that had actually necessarily attested, because we were like sort of little separate teams doing different bits of the app.
The business are always in communication with us all the time, so we always show them things, what we have questions about, like we ask questions. And to be honest, they're getting so used to it, they're coming up with a solution themselves sometimes. They look at something and go, I don't like that, can we change it to this, what does it look like?
So you're kind of sharing the techniques and what you're doing, so they understand it and then they can start.
So for examples, it's very simple, it's just like all these tick boxes are on the left and on another page I want it on the right, and I was like, but it's on the left on this page, or left on this page, left on this page, but you want it right on this page, and I asked why. That's the sort of things you just ask them questions, and when you start asking questions, change their mindsets about things.
But what do you do when a developer, for example, or even a product owner says, I can't test like you can? How do you change that mindset? Because I've come across that quite often when people say, oh, what you do is different to what I would do.
Well, now it's time to learn, but
Here's a document, read it and come back.
I'll probably have a go and then write them down, and we'll review them together after.
But how do you explain where that mindset comes from? So when you're saying, oh, it doesn't look right there and just look right here,
I just say,
how do you notice that?
I just say, I turn around and just basically say, I never learned this overnight myself. I had to change my way of thinking, I had to learn it, anyone can learn it.
Your users are going to tell you whether you've got the right thing or not in the first place anyway. What we're trying to do at BrightHR is get the whole company to test, so beta programs and things like that, to draw feedback on everyone. I mean, we can all test here, but I guarantee we all test differently, and it's always good to have multiple opinions on things and flag up things that certain people find an issue which I probably didn't find an issue, and vice versa, and get that feedback in and do something with it. Either we put it on a wish list or actually develop it and move forward. I think that's quite important.
I think if somebody else wants to test, then you support them. That's what that skill is.
Yeah.
Making sure that they're supported, so making sure that any questions that they ask don't get deemed as stupid, and you help them understand that, the data that they put in the database looks like this, for example, and that's how it's going to look like that on the UI. If they want something else, they're going to have to put something else in the UI for it to display like it's going to. So it's something as basic as that, for example. So it's just making sure that they're supported.
Simple ways to teach them.
I'll let Phil go first.
Just on the back of what was said there, regards training and get people into mindset, is ISTQB still relevant? And if it's not, what experience or qualification is to test it?
Well, I'm too old in the tooth for this one.
I think ISTQB teaches the basics of testing, but then you develop from that. I think it'll teach you about different techniques, way of doing stuff. But
like boundary testing.
Yeah, good confidence partitioning, deep clustering and all that. But
that's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
It's like module 6, isn't it?
It gives you the kick in the right direction, but then I think you learn everything from your peers, your developers, testers. You even learn from the businesses. They teach you the basic functionality of what they want, how it looks now, how it doesn't look now. So that's really...
I have heard of some people going in, doing, like I said in my day, but ISTQB, and going and getting themselves a contract job as a tester, and I'm like, oh, it's not that, and it's not that they can't learn to do it, and I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't help you. It's just testing to me it's a little bit of a feeling about something. It's intuitive, so you can pass a course, but it doesn't give you that experience or that understanding.
Yeah.
Other people that you're going to work with you don't get to understand developers. I'm sorry if I offend any developers here, but they do have a different mindset. So you have to help cajole them along the way sometimes and stuff. So it doesn't give you any of that. So yeah, it's a good standing to understand the different techniques of testing and why you do the different things. But it doesn't make you a tester by any means. Not in my personal opinion.
I think personally, I think ISTQB is a gateway for a recruiter to let you to even look at your CV and put you forward for a role. That's all it is. It's just a.
It shows an aptitude in doing the testing, though. That's it's an exam that you've passed rather than somebody else who hasn't. But it doesn't mean that somebody else who hasn't isn't a better tester than you. It's
26 questions out of 40 and multiple choices.
It's 45
Do you think
though,
sitting
isn't
the
it?
exam just to get a job is pretty bad though?
Well,
if
it's
you're
not.
sitting it just to get a job through a recruiter, you're kind of like enforcing that mentality that this is needed and you need this certification to get a job.
You put live a system that only passed 26 out of 40 tests.
Depends what the system you want to send on the test was. Depends what the test was.
We're going to move on from that.
Depends on the questions we were on, what we were testing.
Yeah, this could be like how long.
Go on, Claire.
As we are enabling the disciplines and encouraging them to test, and there's so much pressure on testers to automate and get more involved in code, is this still relevant to manual testers? Those who are only manual, are we talking them out of jobs, or are we eradicating their jobs?
At Money Supermarket, the manual testers that we had there on the app were fantastic. I did a lot of API testing at Money Supermarket and a bit of app test, front end testing on the app. But the ones that did the front end testing, they knew the app inside out. It was just they would find just so many defects that you just wouldn't have found just by going through the scenarios that you were given, say for example. So yeah, definitely think there are manual testers are more than useful.
I think
I agree with the exploratory side of it as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Basically, I look at automation and testing.
They work together, I think, don't they?
Yeah. The different skill sets, but they both
I'm still very much heavily manual, but I very rarely test to requirements in terms of like UI or API testing or any of that. Most of my time now is spent looking through monitoring, like logs, and like investigating live systems and problems. And I love it. I think as investigators, we're pretty good at it. And I think it's still a heavy manual testing role. It's just not traditional in the traditional sense of it. So I think this manual testing is still very, very relevant. It just may not be in the traditional sense of testing this new feature on this application.
Do we do ourselves a bit of a disservice though by using the phrase manual testing?
Yeah.
Are you going to think of a posher phrase for it then?
Testing.
Well, it's just testing, right?
Yeah, testing.
What's manual about it?
Yeah.
Because then it's implying the automation does testing, which doesn't really. It's the part where you're thinking about it, you're asking the questions. When you're looking at logs, you're still testing.
Yeah.
I think there just need to be a differentiation between it, because I think if you go for a job, then you need to be able to say what your strengths and weaknesses are. And my strengths are not automated testing, and I don't want to go into automated testing. But then I don't actually want to just sit there and press buttons on an app or a UI either. And I'm not saying that's what they do. I'm just saying, but that's what, because there's a range of things. And then we hit the nail on the head with logs and everything. I used to always be looking at the logs when I'm testing, and I'm constantly, even manual testing. When you're doing it, when you're on a web app, you're looking at the calls that are coming back, aren't you? You're not just pressing buttons. You're checking that all the responses that you're getting back are correct. You know.
You're using your brain.
Well, you look at inspect devices. You look at everything to make sure that all the information coming back is correct. So, Yeah, there's more to it than just pressing buttons when manual testing.
So we kind of talked about effectively role training to be more about kind of influencing the rest of the team to take more responsibility for quality. I think a big part of that for me is around wording and phrasing is really important. So my question is, what words or phrases when you hear in your day-to-day kind of teams sets like a warning sign up in your head and you think, you know, that's not right and really triggers you to, I say jump on it, but like realise that the team just don't get it.
I'm going to make this last question, just so
Give it an example.
Yeah, please.
So for me, the phrase that I really don't like is like gatekeeper.
I don't read that.
So when people start saying gatekeeper, it implies that rather than the team sharing responsibility for quality,
You've got one person.
effectively it's one person who is the gatekeeper, and if something gets to light, then it's the gatekeeper's fault. So when people use the word gatekeeper, I immediately jump on and say, what do you mean by that? Try and understand what the reason behind it is and try and talk around and say, well, all teams responsible for quality. You know, testing is one aspect of that, and it happens throughout the life cycle of the development. So are there any particular phrases that you hear in day-to-day that really make you twinge?
Not in this job I have, but isn't that the QA job to do that? I hate that. It's like, what's the QA job? What are you on about? It's like, wasn't it your job to investigate why this is not working? Is it not your job to investigate why it's not working as well? I can do a certain aspect of it, you can do another aspect, we can try together to find out findings at the end. That's one thing I've had in previous companies. And it always comes back to the tester. Why has this gone in live? Why is this a bug? Well, why are you pointing straight at me? It's a tester's fault. That's one example I can think of myself. Why is it always up to the QA to investigate certain things and to dev to investigate certain things? It should be a team. We should have a discussion. We should think of the scenarios, what might cause that problem.
I feel like that's kind of like how it is though. Maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it should, I don't know. But if a bug does go live and then all of a sudden your service team are coming over to your desk, stood over you saying, you know, we've had 10 calls for like a certain scenario, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden your CTO's behind you and everyone else, and then it's like, what do you do there? Do you know, like, it's gone through maybe 10 people, you know, we've all worked on it. It just happens that the QA has pressed the release button and no one's seen it. But it could be so obscure, you know, like you never catch it. I don't think, unless anyone does here, how do you get over that? It's always going to, we're kind of the last people, we're the last people to sort of like see it off into the wild.
In some
But it's not you making the decision of
No,
if something
no.
goes live, and that's the difference.
No, certainly not.
Just because you're pushing a button, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
you said, I decide that this goes live.
No, I totally agree. I think I used to think that like I was the gatekeeper, and then it was quite interesting. I got told, well, actually, a QA would be better as like sort of laying out the law of the land, you know, just describing what it actually is. Like, this is what we've got. We've got X amount of bugs going in. Is it good to go? And you know, collectively as a team or EPO or whoever will then decide whether it, you know, it's worthy. It's only when you get your P1s or, you know, your crucial bugs that you just want to actually say, look, no, this can't go out because this is not quality, what we're going to ship here. People aren't going to buy this or whatever.
But if it got missed and nobody spotted it, then nobody spotted it and we all fucked up.
Yeah.
But it's not my fault, it's
No.
our collective fault.
But someone will still come to your desk.
And I'll tell them, whoops, all of us fucked up, this bug got live.
I just think it's
Oh,
part of
well.
our job description. It's just how you push it off.
Not to take the blame though.
No.
Sorry for swearing.
People want to have a clean culture. I definitely understand what was missed, but you know, it's not the case of president and test and say to your qualities. You know, as a team, most places kind of, you know, collaborate as a team together. It's not just the testers, it's development and such. And it's, okay, let's understand what happened, but it's not confronting someone out saying, this is your mess up, whatever you say. It's yes, understand what happened, but having a clear culture brings in things to help.
To be honest, the best thing is to learn from it. I don't mind defects going out. They happen, you know, and you can't catch everything. So, but the team should learn from it. Find out.
Yeah.
So understand what the problem is, why it went out like it did, and you change the process for next time.
Okay, so you'd have an
so it
incident
doesn't.
analysis, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
root cause analysis.
A root cause, so, you know, all of your team will sit down and talk about it. It's like, yeah, okay, so this happened and it came in here, and yeah, so what should we do? Well, we should have had some more automated tests here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that's
should have
it,
had
yeah.
some more UI tests there, but yeah, it should have been tested there. And there's lots of tests in there.
Do you only have incident analysis when there's a major problem? Or do you have analysis when it goes well?
No, that's just a retro, isn't it?
Retro,
And everyone's got a smiley face and
Celebrating
it's happy.
success, you should know that.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a part of that as well, is if we're only ever analysing failures, we're making the meeting where we analyse it a negative thing, whereas if it's a normal thing that we do as analysis, then hopefully people don't feel it's a blame culture, because it's normal that we analyse, especially when it's going well, even when it goes wrong, it's the same analysis, it's not blaming anyone.
Point.
Cool. Is there any other questions?
One quick one. The ratio between developers and testers. I've worked in places where it's very confined.
Depends on the project, I think. Depends on the complexity of the project. Depends.
Depends on how many automated tests are being written, if the developers are the ones writing the automated tests. I've worked in companies where the developers are doing the development and writing automated tests based on scenarios that a tester's given them. So you've got that sort of, you've still got that knit between the two of you. And there's more developers. The ratio is higher than I would expect from developer to tester, but that's because, like we said earlier, about the risk of doing the testing further down the line. So you've caught a lot of the issues up front first.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. So I think if you can get that balance on who's doing it, it's the work, isn't it? Who's doing the work? How much of testing have you got to do?
You should be able to think about if you need more testers at a certain time. So you know, talking about ratio, and you've got you just ramp, like you can work as a team to do the testing. Yeah. But if you've got additional resource, you can just ramp up, ramp down. You should have some testers that are adapted to it.
Was it?
One-to-one.
That's cool.
That was a tester.
Microsoft with one-to-one.
If I was going to say anything typical, I would say one, I don't take this by gospel, well this is what I've learned from my previous manager who sat next to you. It does depend on the project, but I kind of think you went 1 in 4, one tester to every 4, 1 in 3.
We had 1 in 4 when they were pairing the developers. So it depends on whether the developers are pairing. So depending on how much work they're churning out and how much you're getting like sort of pushed over to you.
1-on-1 would be amazing though. Imagine the amount of shit you could get done. Be awesome.
Expensive salary then.
Great product, so.
What's the ratio like for you?
Well, for me personally, it's 1/6. 1 tester to 6 devs. 2 platforms. Just deal with it. It's alright.
That's a lot. That's hard.
So what it is, so I predominantly work on mobile. So the tester's just laughing there. But what we do is like, you know, tickets come in, fine. But we also do like mob testing. Before we're ready to release, or we think we're ready to release, or features done, we'll all sit there together, we'll all go through it, both platforms on this big screen, go through the journeys, make sure everything's okay, and then after that, we send it out to the business. Everyone's 50% of the people in the company are beta testers who are signed up, so we get them to have a look at it as well, and we just want them to use it, see if there's anything that we've missed from something else, and then a couple of weeks later we'll then release. So I think it works. It's worked so far. You know.
Yeah. Well, one last question that make it quick.
You can ask us after.
His arm's getting really tense. His arm's dropped down.
First of all, absolutely, you four fantastic.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward in the next 3 years, and you've got 3 words each.
Oh, we have to see each, or?
What is the biggest challenge that the testing is going to face in the next 3 years? Describe that.
Big question.
Brexit.
That's true though, actually.
Yeah.
Well, you can have one word, that's right. You don't think.
Keeping up with delivery, so the pace of things coming through, basically.
More, yeah.
Oh, right.
Let's have a look at me.
Oh, I've said mine. I can look at you now.
Yeah, that, bring the gang. Adapting to the technology, I think. Adapting to technology. Thanks.
It's a big question, man. I'm going to have to
I'm going to look at
think about this for a minute.
It's pressure, isn't
Come on, you
it?
two. Come on, we can get out of here if your answer.
It's going to change. It's going to change again. Like,
When you read the news tomorrow, you'll have a different view, right?
it's definitely going to change again. It's every 2 years it's changing to something new.
So is that the challenge? One of the
Yeah,
challenges?
the challenge is adapting to that.
Change.
Yeah,
Adapting to
adapting to change. Emma?
Literally can't answer that right now.
It's pretty hard, man.
Can't answer now,
That question. Oh yeah, GDPR. No, I forgot about that. Nice one. What Matt said. GDPR.
It's 3 words.
That's going to be, in the next 3 years, more like the next 3 months. That's going to be beefy.
Cool. So that's all we've got time for. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion. And have another round of applause for our panel.